Hi, Dan. How are you?
Thank you. We decided not to actually make the bread tonight because of all the risings and the amount of time it would take.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I'm finding the more I bake bread, the more forgiving it is. Hi, Kate. Um, because hmm?
Since we're doing Irish, I thought I'd say something in
Oh yeah,
Irish.
you're good. You're good. I can't speak any of it, I wish. But I do find that baking bread, the more you do it, the more and you realize, that the yeast, how much yeast you use is, if you want a real quick rising, use more yeast. If you want to take a while and bake it overnight, then you can use less yeast and let it ferment in the fridge for a while, which I think I'll do tonight too, because I don't have this made in succession because it almost didn't make that much sense because it pretty much looks the same. So I'll just talk you through it. I'll talk us through it as we go, but it's just kind of fun to play with. And this is a really fun recipe. I mean, it's really easy to put together. I think the biggest that what takes the most time is the getting the fruit hydrated, in the tea. That's kind of what I find is takes the most time. So, and like anything, there's a million ways to do anything.
You mentioned have 2 tablespoons of butter. Is that only for sprinkling in the pan?
Kate caught that too. I added that late in the game, and so thank you, Kate. But the butter goes into the bread. So when you add any kind of fat or butter or milk or cream to a bread, it's called an enriched bread. And I just think it adds, especially with the fruit, and since it is sort of a special bread, it's called an enriched bread, and it just kind of makes it a little softer, I think.
Okay.
Especially because we're using some whole wheat. You could use all white with this too if you want. I just like to add a little healthy element to everything. So I always turn things into whole wheat, and I mean, it's very flexible. You could use oats, and if you didn't have the wheat bran, you could use all white flour. You could use half and half. I think I have a half of, or 1/3 is whole wheat this time, and then 2/3 is the white. And that's basically how you can get sort of a white whole wheat flour. It's just got a little more fiber to it, a little more, I think it just adds a nice flavor too, a nice nutty flavor to the bread. So I always add a little bit of whole wheat to my breads. And if you do use oats instead of the wheat bran, I always find that anytime I add oats or oat flour to a baked good, it just really keeps it nice and moist, and I love that. So I like the oat crackers we made that day, Kate. Those were, I mean, they got crunchy, but they have a lot of flavor. Here we go.
They kept really well too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Hi, Maria. I know I still have some. I baked the rest of mine, and some got a little crunchy, but they're still so tasty. Hello.
Hello.
How are
Hi,
you?
Barb
Hi.
Edstrom. I'm Gabby
Hi.
Pasquarello's grandmother. Here she is.
Hi.
Oh, hi. So where's Maria? Maria is the
I'm
one
right
that signed
here.
up. Hello.
Hi.
You
meet
sound
you.
you sound like you have a good Italian name, maybe?
Yes, I married
Okay.
an Italian. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
why.
All right. Very fun. So this would be sort of close to panettone, I think. Is it called a panettone
yeah,
bread?
yeah,
It's not quite
right.
as light though. I mean, you could make it as light as you want, but like I was just saying, we have a lot of whole wheat flour and everything in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there was one person who said she was going to have to watch the recording later. So so I think everybody's here. Pretty sure. So how many of you are experienced bread bakers?
I used to be, but I have stopped doing that for a long time.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Regina, tell me your friend's name again.
Diane,
Okay.
Diane.
Sorry.
Yeah, she's a very experienced bread baker.
Oh,
Ooh.
great. So you can correct me all you want, Diane, because but I do my own thing, and it always, I like I've told Kate. Kate's been to a few of my classes, and I think all of my classes actually, Kate. And I'm not a huge rule follower when it comes to baking. Oftentimes people say it's so you have to do this and that, and I just go phooey to that, and it always works out. If I want to sort of fudge on this or how it's put together, I just sort of I just don't get too worried about anything, and it usually just works out. And especially with bread, I mean, I think if it's true, the saying that they've been making this particular Barmbrack bread for try and say that 3 times really fast. It's got Barmbrack. For centuries and centuries, that it's been made 1,000 different ways. So the fun story is, I mean, I didn't know this until recently, but Halloween it started as a Celtic kind of pagan custom, and then I don't know all the details of it, but I wrote it in a little brief history, and it's called Samhain. I mean, it's pronounced Samhain.
That one,
And
yeah.
it's I love Halloween anyway. So, but this bread is made, and often traditionally they'll put a little token of some kind in the bread. So whoever gets that piece, it might be a ring, it might be a rag or a pea, and they all mean something. If you get a ring, you'll be married. If you get a stick, you'll have a bad marriage. If you have a coin, you'll be wealthy. A piece of cloth, that would be kind of bad luck, or you may be poor. And a dried pea, if you got a dried pea, you wouldn't be married. So they'd wrap it up in a cloth, or I know. So I think a lot of the bakeries in Ireland, they'll just put a little plastic token in, and it's just for novelty. It's usually a ring nowadays, I think, but it's kind of a sweet little tradition. So let's see, Julie, you're going to bake along today. Kate, are you
Yep.
baking today, or you're going to later?
Ours is rising right now. The first
you
rising.
made it already. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make mine, and I'm going to put it in the fridge overnight to kind of ferment. So that's a way you could do this with just about any bread, because the refrigeration will slow the yeast down, but also helps to develop a little more flavor. So that's, the quicker you have something rise with more yeast, I think the less flavor you have. But if you use a little less yeast and can put it in the fridge for a nice slow rise for maybe 10 or 12 hours, I think you develop a little more flavor, and that's with pretty much any bread. So that's what I'm going to do, but we'll walk through everything tonight. So a little bit about me. Some of you, no, just Kate has met me before in classes, but so I got my culinary certificate from the Dublin Cookery School in 2020, and had to be, basically evacuated from Ireland after 10 weeks because of COVID, that whole story. But I was there for 10 weeks, and it was really an amazing experience. I've been teaching cooking classes for a number of years, but I just really felt the need to go and kind of expand my skills and get a little street cred. So, just make sure I knew what I was talking about, and I'm pretty sure I do. I just thought, our daughters said, we're going to be empty nesters, and it was kind of the perfect opportunity. So I decided to take the opportunity. So it was a wonderful experience, but it was such a bummer that I had to leave 2 weeks early, but actually it was 4 weeks early, because my husband was going to come over, and we were going to celebrate our anniversary for 2 weeks after my course. And so it was like heartbreaking. It still breaks my heart. But I got a great education, but I also have been doing this for a long time, and I've been teaching myself for a really long time how to cook. And I love to bake certain things. I'm not a fancy baker. I'm not a, I don't make cookies very well, but I, maybe can make a cake, but I love to bake bread, and I'm more of a cook. But I do love to bake bread, and I love to make sourdough. So I have sourdough classes, and I do a lot in my kitchen here. I teach at Cooks of Crocus Hill. And is everybody in the Twin Cities? Are you all in the Twin
Mhm.
Cities? Okay.
Yeah.
And I do a few at other spots around town that have cooking classes. So it's really fun, and I enjoy it quite a bit. So as we get going with our Barmbrack bread, I just want to encourage any questions along the way. I'll do my best. So if you have your recipes, and Kate picked this up because this was sort of a last minute ad, but I forgot to incorporate it in the instructions, is there's some melted butter that will go in with our wet ingredients. And then you'll just want to spray your pan really well, whatever pan you're going to use. I'm just going to use a loaf pan, just because sometimes I like to just make some toast, but just spray or butter your
That's a
loaf
big
pan well
pan.
before you put it in the oven, whenever that is, tonight or tomorrow, however. So we can get started now. I'm going to push my laptop back a little, and I'm going to just kind of go down like this. Can you see my food and
Mhm.
everything all right? Okay.
Yep.
So I have here,
Nice prep.
I started, so I'm doing 2/3 of white flour, 1/3 of whole wheat. You can do any combination you want. I just find this works. I've done half and half. I've done all whole wheat, and it all kind of works. The one thing with whole wheat is that it may need a little bit more water to hydrate the flour. So if it just seems a little really dry, you'll just want to add a little bit more water, or dash of milk or something like that. But with baking bread, I mean, it's the ingredients, but it's also time and temperature. So those are the main things that once it's all mixed in the bowl that you have to think about. And we're going to put our dry ingredients in the bowl first, and then the wet ingredients in. And the reason we do that is because they are, all these dry things are like, and all the wet things are like, so they'll mix better together before we combine them, if that makes sense. So, but what I like to do is, what I want you all to do is to save about 1/4 of the cup. Once you've got all of our dry ingredients mixed in, save about 1/4 cup, and we're going to use that to knead with. And maybe we'll need it, and maybe we won't. Like especially with a bread recipe, they're not going to always be exact. Every flour is different. You don't know when it was milled, how long it was in the shelf, how long has it been in your own shelf, the style of flour. So recipes can really vary, and that's just something that and the more you bake, the more you get used to how you need to deal with a real dry dough or a real wet dough. Just add a little bit more flour, and it usually works out fine. I'm going to use a little wheat bran. You certainly could use oats if you didn't have wheat bran. It can be kind of hard to find, but it just adds a nice kind of lightness to it. And I do sometimes do this recipe with wholemeal flour, and I make my own wholemeal flour by, it's a percentage of wheat bran and whole wheat, and that really gives it a nice light consistency. But I'm just going to add a little extra wheat bran to this today. And then I have, we're just going to pop our yeast right in. It's a teaspoon of yeast, and just sprinkle that all over. A lot of times you'll hear people say to bloom your yeast in some liquid. And I know my yeast is good. That's the only reason why you do that, is to make sure that your yeast is alive. And I know my yeast is alive, so I always just pop it right in. I often don't bloom it in water. And then a good teaspoon of, I use kosher salt. If you're not using kosher salt, use half of the amount, because kosher salt by weight is more weight and volume. They just don't match up. And table salt is just finer granules, so it's heavier. So, and you can use your hand like a good Irish ma'am and mix this all around. We can set it aside for a second. And before I forget, I want to take out that 1/4 cup of this mixture just in case we need it.
I
We
have a
will need it.
question. I have a question. In that first paragraph or second paragraph, up above it says to reserve 1/4 of a cup. And then in this paragraph, it says then reserve 1 cup.
Oh, I need to have you as my proofreader, Kate. No, it's just that same 1/4 cup. Sorry about that.
Oh,
Wait,
it's
no.
the same 1/4. Oh, okay.
Yeah. My apologies. Please.
The only reason I'm so specific is that
No, that's
you told
okay.
me to read this.
Yeah, I know exactly.
And I'm not a
Yeah,
cook.
no. And I didn't mean for you to be my proofreader, but you're good at it. You're really good at it.
I was just trying to follow. Anyway,
don't even
thanks
see
for
it,
the
but,
clarification. Yeah.
no, yeah, sorry. I just like to save a 1/4 cup, and we can just set that aside for a sec. And then I've got my my fruit has been soaking in some hot tea, and it's not even hot anymore. Again, with all these fruits, I mean, you could use all raisins if you want. You could use combination, whatever you have. I like to take the dates and the apricots, and I just use the scissors to cut them up so they're about the same size as the raisins or the craisins, whatever you're using. I think that just helps, but it really plumps up. They really plump up quite a bit. And then to this, we just add our melted butter. And again, this is just for richness and really kind of.
Because everything's better with butter.
Everything's better with butter. And then this is some honey. So I put in the honey. My honey's a little sticky. I did put it in the microwave. You know how it kind of crystallizes? I did put it in the microwave for a little bit, and then an egg. And the egg. Oh, I've got to put the cinnamon in with our. Need about a teaspoon of cinnamon in with our dry ingredients too. It doesn't have to be a full teaspoon if you're not so wild about cinnamon. You can do a little bit, and then so I want to get that stirred around really well for sure. I also love this. It's called a Danish dough whisk, and it's really good for batters and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Not really for when the dough is completely combined, but it works really well for batters and lighter things like that. And then we're going to pop an egg in here. Any old egg. And again, it's really nice if all of your ingredients can be at the same room temperature, because they'll combine better that way as well. And we need a little vanilla in this. Oftentimes I don't even measure, but I will tonight so that I don't get in trouble.
I think hydrating the fruit in like rum or brandy or something sounds kind of nummy. Is that something that ever gets done? Okay.
Absolutely. You could do a little whiskey if you want. You could, I mean, you definitely can do, yeah, even just, because basically vanilla is it's got alcohol in it, but I actually, so this is vanilla that I've had for a long time. And I buy vanilla beans. And when I use the vanilla bean, scrape out the seeds from the bean, I'll pop it in here and then I'll add whiskey to it. Most people use vodka. I'm like, well, why the heck do that? I mean, I think bourbon or whiskey just is more flavor. And so when you add those pods back in, I mean, those pods are not done giving up all their flavor. And I mean,
It refreshes.
they just keep going for a long time. And I've got a ton of beans in here. And sometimes I'll just put cheap vanilla in here and just kind of enhance it. It's awesome, because vanilla is crazy expensive. I think if I were to buy this today, it would be something like maybe $75 or $80. It's really, really expensive. So I'm like, gosh, I'm going to do what I can to kind of save on that for sure. So then we can make a little well in the center of our flour mixture so we can get this going, and we can just pop it all in. And if you have a stand mixer, you can certainly do it in your stand mixer. And that's what I often do, but we're not going to do that today. So you can kind of get it going with a fork or with a wooden spoon until it becomes incorporated, and then you'll have to get in there with your hands. But really, this is not a hard thing to put together at all. And oftentimes you'll see where they'll sort of strain out the liquid and then add the fruit later. But I thought, well, why do that? It didn't really save much time, and it was still nicely incorporated. So I just knead it with the fruit inside, and it looks fine. Or even in the stand mixer. These little flexible dough scrapers are really nice for making like a brown bread or soda bread too, because you can really scoop around and get the flour incorporated into the into the dough. And I just like to get it pretty well combined in the bowl before I turn it out onto my counter, because it's just a little easier to deal with in the bowl than once it's all over the counter. So you can see there's no real, I keep mixing it until there's no more dry bits for the most part. And I'll take some of this reserved flour mixture and just put a little on the board. And then once it's fairly solidified, you can scoop it all out. And we'll save that bowl. Some people would clean out the bowl and do all that. You can certainly do that, but I'm going to pop it right back in the bowl for the kneading. And you can just put a little flour on the top, and then to knead, I don't know if you've ever kneaded before, kneaded dough, but once it gets all combined here, we're going to do this for a few minutes. And if it's sticking, you can take a scraper of some kind, a spatula if you don't have a dough scraper or bench scraper, and just, so I have a solid surface. This is quartz, or if you have a wooden board, that's kind of nice. And things don't stick very much to this, which is really kind of nice. It's very nice for pastry. But I'm really glad that I left some of this out, because I can tell it's not gonna, it might have been too dry had I had all of that flour in here. So when you're kneading, I push forward, pull and turn, and then wrap it over itself. The goal is we want a nice smooth surface here. So we're folding it onto ourselves, and this is kind of the rough and bumpy open or creased side. So I'm pushing and just getting it. We're just going to keep kneading it. This is where therapy comes in, because it just you do this for about 3 or 4 minutes and add more flour if you need it. Any questions or anything? This might be a quicker class than I anticipated. It's like I said, I think the most time consuming part of it is gathering all the ingredients. But this is developing the gluten as we need. So this would be any bread. When you activate it like this with your hands and you're working with the gluten strands and it becomes tighter, and this is helping to build structure in your bread. So when you make a cake and you want a nice tender crumb and you see a recipe where it says don't overmix, that's because when you overmix, like what basically I'm doing here, we're mixing, but we want to develop the gluten. In a cake, you're wanting a nice tender dough batter. So you just mix it till it's combined. And also if you feel like you've overmixed something, you can let it rest too. And then the gluten kind of calms down and relaxes a bit. So that's essentially what's happening when we let it rise. It's the yeast is forming in the little air pockets and letting off the carbon dioxide, I think it is, carbon dioxide. And the gluten's holding those little pockets together. So when you push down on it, all those, all that structure is kind of messed up. So the gluten does this versus this nice straight. It's basically protein. When you hear about gluten, it's a protein. And it's what builds structure in our doughs and cakes and cookies and things like that. Oop, get a stray piece of fruit, you just pop it back in. That was a cherry that really, I didn't have, I made this the other day and I didn't have craisins, so I used dried cherries and it was really good, but they just plump up a little bigger and I didn't chop them up. If you need more flour, grab a little bit of flour, just add a little bit at a time, but it's going to be a sticky dough. It's going to be pretty sticky, so that's okay, as long as it's coming together. How you doing, Julie?
I think I'm doing well.
Let's see your dough. Let's see. Yeah, looks great. Looks really good. Yeah, so we'll want to do this for a couple more minutes. I might need some more flour.
Yeah,
I have 4 dogs underfoot thinking this smells really good.
4 dogs, holy cow. But the goal here is just to get a nice smooth top, kind of, I guess. Smooth like a baby's butt, where you pat it like it really does kind of feel like a baby's butt.
Baby's bottom.
Baby's bottom. Kind of go around your board, pick up any loose flour, any crumbs. You don't want to waste anything. So I suppose at some point this bread would have been made like any other bread, long before bicarbonate of soda was available. It would have been made with basically a sourdough starter and probably a wheaten bread, wheaten flour. Not necessarily, I mean, they didn't really have white flour so much back then. But I love kneading dough. You see bread mixes or recipes, no knead. Oh my gosh, I love kneading dough. It just makes me happy. I mean, I bought this fancy mixer and I barely ever use it because when I make my bread, when I make my sourdough, for sure there's no kneading for that. That's a whole different process. But I don't even miss my mixer. So as you notice, Julie, as you keep kneading it, it's getting stickier and stickier.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. We don't want to keep adding too much flour because the more flour we add, it's just going to make it tougher. And so we want to keep some of that moisture in there, but as long as it's still pulling away like what we've got going here, so I got to go here so you can see me, then you're good. You know, even though it's sticky, as long as it's not sticking to your hands or your countertop, you're good.
Am I the only one cooking along?
Yes, you are.
No,
You are.
no, down here at the end.
They will again. They will.
They made it before.
Oh,
Maria-
okay.
Maria,
Yeah,
Ooh,
see, they've
down
got,
here.
wait.
they've got
Yeah.
dough.
Okay.
That's your dough. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Kate, how's yours? Is yours risen?
It seems like it's taking a long time to rise, so I don't know if maybe we should put it in the refrigerator overnight and let it do that.
Where is it? Where do you have it rising?
Well, right now we have it on a vent, you know, that's covered on the floor, and it's up to, I think it was at 80 degrees, so that should be a
Oh.
good temperature.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that should be a really good temp.
Let me ask you a question. Can we can put it in the fridge without having it rise first?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. I would
Okay.
actually put it, so ideally what you would want to do is let it rise for a bit at room temp and then
Okay.
put it in the fridge for that last rise, but in your
Oh,
pan.
for-
So that's what I'm
Okay,
going to do. I'm going to let this sit once. So, Julie, when you pop your finger in there and it kind of holds, you should be good.
No.
But I'm going to let mine rise at room temp for a little bit. And that's another thing, that it's getting chilly out. So it's so hard to gauge the temperatures in our kitchens and things. But, and this is a heavy dough. It's got a lot of things weighing it down. It's got the whole wheat, it's got the fruit. So it's not going to get, it's kind of a dense bread. Let me show
But
you.
we have the light on in the oven, so we
Yeah,
thought, is that all right there?
That's what
for a
I
couple
do
hours?
often. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the
That's
third rise, we can put it in, when we put it in our pan, we can do it overnight.
just two rises. There's just two rises. There's the one that would be on the countertop. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But this was my bread that I made, and oops, somebody got into it. But you know, I did it in a loaf, and you see there's a little split here. You see the split? So what I think I'll do this time, because when the dough is rising in the oven, it's before it hardens on the top, it's rising. And the minute the heat of the oven builds a crust, then the interior of the dough, which is still rising, has nowhere to go unless, that's why when you see sourdough or a lot of doughs, there's decorative slit, you know, or cuts in it. And that's really serves a purpose. It's not just to be pretty, even though they are pretty. But say, had I put a slash in the top of this dough, I wouldn't have gotten this crack. Does that make sense? So once, once the heat of the oven makes a crust on the top here, that expanding inside, kind of like, you know, if you have jeans on too tight, you know, a muffin top, basically. Okay. So,
cracked a little bit
so
on the
good.
side.
Mhm.
And there's really a lot, you could do some fun things with this, like roll it out and then put some of the fruit in and then roll it up and put it in the loaf pan. That would give you sort of a pretty swirl in it. If you wanted to do something like that, make it a little more decorative. But it is a dense loaf. This is a very dense loaf. And if you didn't want it so dense, then you could use all white flour. And it'll look dense because we put tea in it. So some recipes call for milk, but I've seen more recipes with tea that soak the fruit. But once once it's kneaded, then you want to put it back in your bowl, and we want to cover it with either, you could brush some oil on it. I've got this little olive oil sprayer that I love, and it's just a couple sprays just so it doesn't dry out. And then put some plastic wrap on it, but over the top. You don't want it touching the dough because it'll prevent it from expanding. So you could use a smaller bowl, that it would fit in. But I have these kind of nifty little lids that just go on, and it's a nice, like, I can pick up the whole thing with this. So that's going to hold in any kind of
That's a nice one.
keep air from creating from drying out the bread. I'm going to wash my hands here real quick. So this would go for about 2 hours or so at room temp. And then, so let's say you're going to put it in a bread pan like I'm going to use. So let's pretend that we've got 2 hours here, and it's, a little bigger. And sometimes it's not going to even be doubled, but it'll just feel lighter too. So just fluffier, than when it did, because this, again, it's pretty dense. So let's say we've had 2 hours in the oven. So you'll want to kind of press it out a little bit, take it out of the bowl. And because I'm going to use a loaf pan, which has already been buttered or oiled, you just basically want to get it to the closer to the shape. So like my dough, my last one, the edges were really droopy because the ends were thinner. So I want to get this one a little more even. So that means basically kind of make it into a square, more of a square, and rolling it up. So then it'll fit nicely in my loaf tin. And then I'd pop it in the pan, and we'll let it go another hour or hour and a half until it doubles again. And then I would just use a sharp knife and give it a little slit down the top, so there's somewhere for it to expand if it needs to. Not really sure why white breads don't always need that slit, but I don't make a lot of white breads, so but that's basically it. Or you could make them into smaller little buns too if you wanted, and give everybody a little trinket. Play a game with it. If you go to like Michael's or something and could get some little toys, or where would that be? A little 5 and dime or something. Are those even around anymore?
Not really.
You could brush the top with a little butter too before you put it in the oven if you want. That's an option. There's lots of things you can do with it. What else? What other little options was I going to talk about with you? Actually, I'm going to put this back in because it's not going to. I'm going to put it back in the bowl because now it really does need to rise. So I'll just leave it put it back in a little. So if you're going to use a round pan, you can just sort of press it out a little bit into a round and pop it in your pan. And maybe you could make like a cross or something in it if you want.
Is
the
that
fairies
on
out.
On the second rise, you mean?
On the second rise, yeah.
Okay.
When you put it in the pan. So when you make Irish soda bread, you make a sign of the cross with a serrated knife, and that's to let the fairies out.
Okay, here. Oh, I'm just asking the same question. Okay, so we're letting it rise for 2 hours, and then we put it in the pan overnight in the refrigerator, and then when we take it out in the morning, let it rise?
I would well, it will rise a little bit in the fridge, but
okay,
it will a tiny bit, hopefully, but you'd want to bring it to room temp for sure. So while you're
Okay.
preheating your oven, or maybe even before that a little bit, let it come to room temp.
But we
And
can
I
have
think
it
that,
overnight. We can put it in
Yeah.
our pan. Okay.
yeah. That's what I'm going to do
I'm
when
sorry.
I'm done. No. When I'm done, I'm going to put it in. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. This class being late at night or later at night. I was like,
Yeah.
well, I think we need to have an alternative for baking tonight, because I don't want to be up, even though I am a night owl, I don't want to be up late baking, I mean, I do often, but you just want to be sure that you cover it so that so you don't want the plastic wrap to be touching it if you can avoid it. Because once you take that plastic wrap off, it could deflate it a bit. So we're trying not do that. Oftentimes what I use is, when I do this for my sourdough, is I'll use a bathing cap over my bowls or my whatever I need. It's kind of a nice way to keep the air out. That works well too. Those shower caps, the plastic ones that you get in hotels. So every time I go to a hotel, I say, grab the, and I reuse them, but I say, grab the shower cap, because I'm definitely going to use it for my breads for sure. Or when I have my classes, I can go away. What other tips was I going to tell you about? Oats. Yeah, it'd be fun. It's a fun thing to do with kids too, to make bread. They love to get their hands in flour. Anytime I do a kids class, their favorite thing is kneading the dough and getting it all put together, and they love doing that kind of thing. So it's fun. You can make little individual ones for them. Like I said, it'd be kind of cute. So gosh, I mean, that was kind of quick. Any fruit, you can use any fruit you want, dried fruit, add a little whiskey for sure. If you want, there's all kinds of things you can do with it. Flavor it in different ways. I mean, it's a nice, and it really, after the first day, you'll have it and it's really tasty out of the oven. But then maybe by the next day, it's the best toast you'll ever have. It's like cinnamon bread, cinnamon toast, but it kind of sticks with you because of the whole wheat flour and everything.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
I thought of Barmbrack as a Welsh bread.
Well, the Welsh were Celts too. They were Celts too.
Yeah.
And same with the Scottish. So maybe it is. Yeah.
Okay.
But
I just hadn't realized that it was baked in Ireland, I guess. So I was interested to see it in your repertoire.
Well, I mean, that's what I've heard, that Halloween basically started with the Celts. And so I think the Irish are maybe just trying to claim, oh, look at that cutie. Hello. But I mean, Celtic goes back long before Christianity.
Sure.
So,
I just didn't know if perhaps
you
knew if there were similar, very similar recipes or somewhat different or variations, or
I was trying to figure out.
I could look it up.
Well, I was trying to figure out like why this bread at Halloween. That never was answered to me. It was just, it's a traditional bread made around Halloween. You get the little trinket but it didn't really say how that happened or why. So that I don't really know either. I thought, well, that's fun that it's a tradition, but where did it come from? But
what's the Irish bread? Maybe you don't know that stores sell around St. Patrick's Day that kind of looks like this, like pieces of fruit. Am I maybe seeing Barmbrack?
Well, there's Irish soda bread or brown bread. There's brown bread that doesn't usually have fruit in it. Irish soda bread, some people put currants in it. I think many Irish homes would be like, no, but
maybe that's what I've bought. Soda bread with currants. Maybe that's I've bought.
Yeah. Some people use currants. I don't think the fruit is really traditional, but Yeah, I have a really good recipe. I love my recipe for Irish soda bread. It's kind of enriched. It's got eggs in it, which most soda bread doesn't, but I just think it's the best darn bread in the world. Oh, so good. And then I have a brown bread recipe that was my friend Ann's. That's, I mean, easy. I mean, those are quick breads, so you don't have to let them rise at all. You just have to be sure there's an acid to go with the meaning buttermilk is the acidic part that helps it rise. It reacts with the baking soda. So, and there's baking powder in it. But those breads are quick. They're really quick. And again, best out of the oven with some cheese and lashings of butter, as they say, just lashings of it. Good Irish butter. So good. So it's like, yeah, brown bread is really, it's so easy to make and so quick. And often they use treacle, which is like a molasses, but I'm kind of convinced the treacle just tastes better than a regular molasses, but it's the same thing. It's fun and it's really dark and it's delicious, and you can add seeds, and I add a lot of oats to mine and seeds, and it's really delicious. Yeah.
And when I was in Connemara for that month attending school, the Benanti, a woman of the house where we stayed, she was an awesome cook. I mean, she'd gone to school to be a cook, and she had a lot of cookbooks, but one that she used a lot was the one from Kylemore Abbey. And and the Kylemore Abbey cookbook has great brown bread recipe as well as scones and some other baked ones. And I think I can't remember the name of it, but it has one of the sisters' names, and it's been, I don't know, that recipe had been used for like 75 years. So that was a fun option. We had brown bread, fresh brown bread every morning with our meal.
It's on the breakfast table at just about every meal. And if you order soup at a when you go out, the soup is always a pureed soup, and it's usually a vegetable soup unless it's a seafood chowder. And it's everywhere you go, it tastes different. It's the most amazing thing you've ever had. And then they give you a piece of brown bread with butter and honest to God, everywhere you go, it's like, oh, I'm getting soup. Forget everything else. I'll have the soup. I know, and the brown bread everywhere is so good.
That's
I'm actually
you could say the pureed soup, because that's exactly what she would serve, is that whenever we'd have soup, it was always pureed. And I mean, I love that, but I didn't know that was customary.
Yeah. It's pretty much everywhere they puree their soup. And I do a lot of that too. And it just makes it thick and rich and hearty. And maybe they'll put a little cream in it. Of course. Yeah, sure. Maybe a little, but it's not really heavy. It just and it's always vegetable based, and depending on what they put in, it's so good. So tasty. It's really delicious.
So
I've never had a bad meal.
Is there anything special about how you serve the bread, other than like how we would serve it, either toasted or buttered, or?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. One thing though, with just about any bread that you make, the cooling, when it comes out of the oven, the cooling process is part of the cooking process. So try and let it cool most of the way. Sometimes it's hard to wait, but it is part of the cooking process, because if you cut into it too soon, it'll get a little gummy. You'll see it on your knife and you go, what the heck? You just cut into it too soon. So try and let it cool. Of course, it's always good warm, but not hot out of the oven. Try and wait with any bread that you make. Just let it sit, because that's part of the process.
Tough.
I know it is. And smell it, and you can't wait for it. Yeah, just have another loaf on hand all the time so you can grab a piece of toast. But honestly, there's nothing better than a little piece of toast and a cup of tea before bed. I mean, it's kind of it's my sleeping pill at night. I just have a little toast and my tea. I love it. Yeah. How have you all been to Ireland? I know Kate has. Who have you all been? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, there.
I went to Ireland and Mom.
Nope, I've never been to
my mom
Ireland.
has never. Yeah.
Mm,
Oh, and then Gabby has, my two girls have gone to Ireland too. So
nice. I'm pretty obsessed with it. I really am. I just I can't get enough of it. I'm starting I have an Irish food tour um coordinated with my friend Anne, who lives in Galway. And that is April of next year. And we're going to be cooking and just a little bit of touring, but we're going to just be right in Galway. We're not going to be expanding. We're not going all over the country. We're just going to be in Galway, and we'll have a couple days at land in her farmhouse kitchen, baking and making a big dinner for the second night. And then we're going to go to the sea and to Clifton and do some seaweed foraging. And we have a whiskey distillery tour, and we've got some cooking some mussels and all kinds of things like that together with some brown bread, of course. And that's coming in April, and I already have it filled up. All the people I barely even marketed it, and it's full. Are registered, so I'm really excited about that. Yeah, but I hope to keep doing classes with Celtic Junction. They're fun. I have my next one is Mad Sweeney's souffle, cheddar souffle, I think. But I have to. I know I've read about Mad Sweeney, and I forget his story. I forget his story right now because I forget everything. But it's just I guess he loved green, and it's a green souffle because it's got spinach and a lot of herbs and stuff in it, but it's just a cheese souffle that could be kind of fun to serve at the holidays, so that's coming up in a couple of weeks. That's in December. Is it December? I think it's in December, but it's on the Celtic Junction site too, so it could be kind of fun. We could make souffle together. I'm going to pretend I'm Julia Child. So sorry this was so short, but I think do you guys have any questions about the bread? Or I'll send the recording over if you want to take a peek tomorrow, because I know someone missed the class. So you're doing then you can take a look and see if you missed anything or if I missed anything. But Kate, I'm sending my recipes to you for proofreading next time.
That is so funny. It's only because I don't cook that much that I really zero in now.
Well, let me know if you have any questions, because I think sometimes what happens to people is they feel intimidated or their fear overcomes them. And I always like to say, for one thing, when you're just trying something for the first time, of course you're going to mess up. I mean, but you just got to try again. And the more you do it, the more you figure it out. But I don't think you can mess this up. I think it's pretty easy. So,
I plan to make an 8-inch round. Does it take less time or aim for the same amount of time?
It should be about the same amount of time. If you have a digital read thermometer, I typically like to go for a bread like this about 195 internal temperature to 205, no more than that. You don't want it to dry out, but I do put a digital read thermometer into everything. Did I mention that in this? Maybe not in this recipe. I didn't.
No.
Yeah. That's typically about where I want to be, but it should be about the same amount of time. Yeah. And your nose will tell you too. I mean, if it smells like that bread is cooked, then it's pretty much done too. So if it's around the time, you should be okay. Yeah. Okay. And another thing that they, we are so accustomed to using our measuring cups, and all over Europe, they weigh all their ingredients. And I think that's why this takes so long, is because there's so many things to measure out. But if you weigh everything, it goes like that, and you don't have all these dishes to be cleaning up. So I've started, that's why I include gram, and I think grams are 100% easier than ounces also. So I try to include grams in all my recipes now, because it just is so much easier to bake when you can just pop it in, and just tear out, have your scale go to 0 and add your next flour, if you're using, or whatever. They still use teaspoons and tablespoons and things, but it's just so much easier to weigh versus use measuring cups, because we always have the different, there's this liquid measuring cup, the Pyrex, and then there's a dry measuring cup, and you have to have it all out, and but weight, and it's just more accurate all around too, because weight and volume are just such different things. So it's just more accurate. So that's my next bit of suggestion, is to get a scale, just a cheap digital scale. They're like $15. They're greatest things to have in the drawer. Use it all the time, pull it out all the time. So really helps. So does anybody have any questions or anything? Oh, I am recording. Phew, I almost forgot for a second if I recorded, but I did. So thanks for coming, everyone. It was nice to meet everybody.
Thank
Hope to
you.
see you in
Thank
another
you.
class.
Thank you.
Let me know if you have any questions. Y'all are going to be on my email list now, so you're not going to get away from me that easily. But I just send email. I just send recipes for the most part, or class alerts. I don't do anything with the emails. So, and not very often, because I don't put a recipe out all that often. So keep me on your list, and let me know if you have any questions tomorrow. I'm around. I'd be happy to answer. Give me a ring, whatever. Walk you through it. It'll all be fun and delicious. And I'd love to know how you like the bread too.
Yeah. Thank
Really
you.
tasty. Okay. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye
Bye.
now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Kate. Bye.